Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today we'll be exploring the fascinating culture of the Varangian Guard, elite Viking warriors who served as the personal bodyguards to Byzantine emperors. Subscribe now to join our community and support this project. In the opulent halls of Constantinople, where silk-robed courtiers engaged in whispered political intrigues and golden mosaics glittered in the candlelight, strode some of the most unexpected figures in medieval history. Towering, fair-haired warriors from the distant north, wielding massive battle-axes and speaking in their distinctive Norse tongues. According to historian Jonathan Shepherd, author of The Cambridge History of the Byzantine Empire, these men constituted the most famous military unit of medieval Byzantium, the Varangian Guard, elite bodyguards sworn to protect the emperor with their lives. The origins of this remarkable cross-cultural military institution can be traced to a specific crisis in Byzantine history. In 988, Emperor Basil II faced a desperate struggle against the rebellion of Bardas Phocas, a powerful Byzantine general threatening to overthrow him. Military historian John Haldon explains that with his position precarious, Basil turned to an unlikely ally, Prince Vladimir I of Kiev, ruler of the Rus, himself a descendant of Scandinavian Varangians who had established themselves among the Slavic peoples of what is now Ukraine and Russia. A fateful agreement was struck. According to the Byzantine chronicler John Skylitzes, Vladimir would send 6,000 Varangian warriors to assist the emperor in exchange for military aid, trade privileges, and most surprisingly, the hand of Basil's sister Anna in marriage, along with Vladimir's promise to convert to Christianity. This agreement not only saved Basil's throne but established what would become the most legendary military unit in Byzantine history. The initial contingent of Rus Varangians proved their worth almost immediately. As described by historian Warren Treadgold, they were instrumental in defeating Phocas at the Battle of Chrysopolis in 989, where the rebels were utterly routed. Impressed by their fighting prowess and, perhaps more importantly, by the fact that these foreigners had no stake in Byzantine internal politics, Basil established them as his personal guard, beginning an institution that would endure for nearly 2 centuries. What made the Varangians particularly valuable was their status as outsiders. Byzantine politics was notorious for its complexity and backstabbing. Generals and nobles constantly plotted to seize the throne, with military units often backing different contenders. Historian John Julius Norwich notes that as foreigners with limited understanding of or interest in these intrigues, the Varangians offered something rare and precious: absolute loyalty to the person of the emperor, rather than to competing factions. Their oath was to the imperial office itself, not to Byzantine power brokers or political causes. The composition of the guard would evolve over time. While initially composed primarily of Rus and Scandinavian warriors, the Norman conquest of England in 1066 would lead to an influx of Anglo-Saxon warriors fleeing Norman rule. According to the Byzantine princess and historian Anna Komnene, by the 11th century, the guard included significant numbers of Ingloi, English warriors who had brought their military traditions and fierce hatred of the Normans to Constantinople, creating a new cultural element within this already diverse unit. The Varangians would serve as the emperor's shadow for centuries, standing beside the throne during ceremonies, accompanying him in battle, and guarding his bedchamber at night. Their distinctive appearance, tall, heavily armed foreigners in a court otherwise dominated by Greek sophistication, made them not just elite warriors but powerful symbols of imperial authority and exotic majesty. The most iconic image of the Varangian Guard is that of massive warriors wielding equally massive two-handed axes. These weapons, known as Dane axes, became the signature armament of the Guard and a symbol of terror on Byzantine battlefields. According to weapons historian Simon Coupland, these fearsome implements featured crescent-shaped blades measuring between 8 and 18 inches across, mounted on wooden shafts between 4 and 6 feet long. They required tremendous strength to wield effectively but could cleave through shield, armor, and flesh with devastating effect. Archaeological evidence from excavations in Constantinople analyzed by Timothy Dawson suggests the guards maintained their northern fighting traditions while adapting to Byzantine military culture. Grave goods and depictions in Byzantine manuscripts show Varangians typically wielded their traditional axes but also carried the full complement of Byzantine infantry equipment: spears, swords, and the large almond-shaped shields favored by Byzantine heavy infantry. This combination of northern and Byzantine equipment created a distinctive fighting style unique to the Guard. The Varangians' defensive equipment evolved with their service in the empire. Early Varangians likely wore the equipment they brought from home: mail shirts, conical helmets with nasal guards, and round shields typical of Viking warriors. However, historian John Haldon notes that over time, they increasingly adopted elements of Byzantine military equipment, including the distinctive Byzantine lamellar armor made of overlapping metal plates laced together with leather thongs. This hybrid equipment allowed them to maintain some of their traditional fighting methods while gaining the protective advantages of Byzantine armor technologies. Their fighting technique, according to military historian Kelly de Vries, emphasized overwhelming offensive power rather than defensive maneuvering. The signature tactic of the Varangians was the devastating charge, with guards advancing in tight formation while swinging their massive axes in sweeping arcs that could strike down multiple opponents. Princess Anna Komnene, in her historical work, The Alexiad, describes Varangian axemen cutting down Norman knights as if they were harvesting wheat, their tremendous weapons slicing through armor that could resist conventional swords. Training methods for the Guard combined elements of their northern warrior traditions with Byzantine military discipline. Historian Stephen Turnbull suggests that while Byzantine troops typically trained according to the prescribed methods in military manuals like the Strategikon, the Varangians maintained distinctive methods emphasizing individual combat prowess, strength training, and weapons handling. Contemporary accounts frequently mention the Guard's impressive physical strength and endurance, suggesting a training regimen that heavily emphasized these qualities. The Varangians also served as a naval force when needed. Given their origins among seafaring peoples of the north, many guards brought considerable maritime experience to their service. Byzantine military records studied by Elizabeth Jeffreys document Varangians serving on imperial warships during naval campaigns, where their fighting skills made them valuable marines for boarding actions against enemy vessels. This versatility further enhanced their value to the emperors they served. Their reputation for martial prowess spread far beyond Constantinople. Western European sources, particularly Norman chronicles, speak with grudging respect of these axe-bearing barbarians, who represented one of the most significant obstacles to Norman ambitions in the Byzantine Empire. This fearsome reputation served both a military and psychological purpose. Enemies facing Byzantine forces knew the emperor's elite guards would be the most determined and dangerous opponents on the battlefield. The Varangian Guard maintained a distinct organizational structure within the complex Byzantine military hierarchy. According to historian Warren Treadgold, the unit was commanded by an officer known as the Akaluthos, the acolyte or follower, who reported directly to the emperor rather than through the normal military chain of command. This special status reflected their unique position as the emperor's personal force rather than part of the regular army structure. Contemporary Byzantine administrative documents studied by John Halden indicate that the Varangians typically numbered between 5,000 and 6,000 men at the height of the unit's prominence. This force was divided into smaller bands of a few hundred warriors, each with its own officers who were typically veterans selected for both fighting prowess and leadership abilities. Unlike many Byzantine units where officer positions could be purchased or inherited, the meritocratic nature of Varangian leadership ensured that only the most capable warriors rose to command positions. The daily duties of the Guard varied depending on whether the emperor was at peace in Constantinople or campaigning in the field. Within the Great Palace complex, Varangians maintained a continuous presence around the emperor. Michael Sellis, an 11th-century Byzantine historian who served as imperial secretary, describes how the Guard stood watch at the imperial bedchamber, lined the route of imperial processions, and maintained a permanent presence in the throne room during ceremonies and public audiences. These ceremonial duties were not merely for show. Historian Mark Bartusis notes that the Byzantine imperial court was notoriously dangerous, with numerous emperors assassinated by close associates or rival factions. The Varangians' role as incorruptible foreign guardians represented a crucial layer of security in this treacherous environment. Their distinctive appearance and reputation for absolute loyalty served as a powerful deterrent against potential assassins or usurpers considering a move against the emperor. When accompanying the emperor on campaign, the Guard's role expanded significantly. According to John Halden's analysis of Byzantine military records, Varangians served as the emperor's immediate bodyguard on the battlefield, but also functioned as an elite heavy infantry reserve, deployed at crucial moments to break enemy formations or counter particularly dangerous threats. Contemporary accounts frequently mention the psychological impact of Varangian charges, with their distinctive war cries and massive axes creating terror among enemy ranks. An additional responsibility of the Varangian Guard was the protection of the imperial treasury. Byzantine court records examined by Michael Angold reveal that Varangians maintained a permanent guard detail at the imperial treasury chambers within the Great Palace complex. This duty underscored the extraordinary trust placed in these foreign warriors. They were considered more reliable guardians of the empire's wealth than native Byzantine troops who might have family connections to potential usurpers or rebel factions. The guards also had jurisdiction over certain legal matters involving foreigners in Constantinople. According to legal historian Ruth Mackrides, Varangians had the authority to arrest foreign merchants who violated imperial regulations or engaged in criminal activities within the capital. This policing function complemented their protective duties and gave them a broader role in maintaining order in the cosmopolitan imperial capital. The extraordinary loyalty of the Varangian Guard to the Byzantine emperor became legendary throughout the medieval world. According to historian Jonathan Shepherd, this fierce devotion stemmed from several sources, including the Guard's status as foreigners dependent on imperial favor, their generous compensation, and the honor code of their northern cultural traditions which placed tremendous value on oath-keeping and loyalty to a chosen lord. This loyalty was institutionalized in a formal oath that each Varangian swore upon joining the Guard. The 12th-century chronicler Nicetas Choniates describes this ceremony, in which new guards swore on their weapons to protect the emperor with their lives and to die rather than flee from his enemies. This oath created a powerful personal bond between each guard and the emperor, transcending the usual political and familial ties that complicated loyalty among native Byzantine troops. The cultural identity of the Varangians remained distinctly northern despite their service in the cosmopolitan environment of Constantinople. Archaeological evidence from the Varangian quarter of the city, analyzed by archaeologist Jonathan Harris, reveals that the Guards maintained many elements of their native cultures. Runic inscriptions have been found on building stones, and distinctively Scandinavian or Anglo-Saxon items appear in Varangian graves and residential areas. This cultural continuity provided a strong sense of unit identity and camaraderie among guards drawn from similar backgrounds. Despite maintaining their cultural identity, the Varangians also adapted to aspects of Byzantine civilization. Historian Sverrir Jacobson notes that many guards adopted Orthodox Christianity, learned at least functional Greek, and some even married into Byzantine families. This cultural hybridization created a unique subculture within Constantinople, neither fully Byzantine nor purely northern, but a distinctive warrior society that combined elements of both worlds. The prestige of service in the Varangian Guard made it attractive to ambitious warriors from the north. As historian Sigfús Blöndal documented, sagas and chronicles from Scandinavia and Iceland contain numerous references to prominent northerners who served in Miklagard, the Norse name for Constantinople, and returned home with wealth, stories, and enhanced status. The famous Viking king Harald Hardrada, who would later die attempting to conquer England in 1066, served in the Varangian Guard for years and used the wealth and military experience gained there to support his later claim to the Norwegian throne. After the Norman conquest of England, the Guard's composition shifted dramatically. Byzantine historian Anna Komnene writes that large numbers of Anglo-Saxon warriors fleeing Norman rule joined the Varangian Guard, bringing their distinctive fighting traditions and intense hatred of the Normans. According to historian Stephen Morris, this influx gradually transformed the Guard from a predominantly Scandinavian unit to one dominated by English warriors. This transition created some tension within the Guard, but ultimately strengthened the unit by bringing in experienced fighters with strong motivation to serve their new Byzantine masters. The Varangians developed their own unique traditions and customs within Byzantine society. According to folklore historian Håkon Antonsen, the Guards celebrated distinctive festivals that combined elements of their northern heritage with Byzantine practices. One of the most notable was their Yule celebration, which incorporated elements of their pagan past alongside Christian observances, a festival the Byzantine court viewed with fascination as an exotic spectacle. These cultural practices helped maintain unit cohesion and distinctive identity during long years of service far from home. The battlefield reputation of the Varangian Guard was cemented through their participation in numerous pivotal conflicts throughout Byzantine history. According to military historian John Haldon, one of their earliest and most significant engagements came at the Battle of Chrysopolis in 989, where the initial Varangian contingent helped Emperor Basil II decisively defeat the rebel Bardas Phokas. Their performance in this critical battle, particularly their steadfastness when many Byzantine units proved unreliable, convinced Basil of their value as a permanent institution. Perhaps the most celebrated Varangian victory came during the reign of Basil II, at the epic Battle of Kleidion against the Bulgarian Empire in 1014. Byzantine chronicler John Skylitzes recounts how the Varangians formed the emperor's personal guard during this savage mountain battle, where Byzantine forces trapped and annihilated a Bulgarian army. The decisive Byzantine victory ended decades of conflict with the Bulgarian Empire and led to Basil II being remembered as the Bulgar Slayer, a triumph in which the Varangians played a crucial role. The Guard's reputation for unbreakable loyalty was dramatically demonstrated during the chaotic events of April 1042, known as the Byzantine Popular Revolt. According to contemporary chronicler Michael Sellis, when a massive uprising threatened Emperor Michael V, The Varangians stood firm when other palace guards fled, fighting house to house through Constantinople to protect their emperor. Though they could not ultimately save Michael from being deposed and blinded, their fierce defense against overwhelming odds became legendary in Byzantine histories. One of the most significant tests for the Varangian Guard came with the rise of Norman power in the Mediterranean. Military historian Kelly de Vries recounts how in 1081, a massive Norman invasion of the Byzantine Empire led by Robert Guiscard threatened Constantinople itself. At the Battle of Dyrrhachium, although the overall Byzantine force was defeated, the Varangian contingent fought with such ferocity that Norman chronicles specifically mention their terrible axes and berserker fury. This battle established the fierce rivalry between Normans and Varangians that would continue for decades. The Varangians' battlefield adaptability was demonstrated during the First Crusade. According to historian Jonathan Shepherd, when Crusader armies passed through Byzantine territory in 1096 to 1097, Emperor Alexios I used Varangian guards as both military escorts and diplomatic intermediaries. The presence of English and Scandinavian warriors who could communicate with some of the northern European crusaders proved valuable in managing these potentially dangerous armed pilgrims passing through imperial territory. A particularly dramatic episode involving the Guard occurred at the Battle of Beroia in 1122. Byzantine military records analyzed by John Haldon describe how Emperor John II Komnenos deployed his Varangians as a decisive reserve force against invading Pecheneg from the northern steppes. When the battle hung in the balance, the Varangian charge broke the Pecheneg formation, contributing significantly to a victory so complete that the Pecheneg ceased to exist as an independent threat to the empire after this defeat. The remarkable battlefield effectiveness of the Varangians stemmed not just from individual fighting prowess but from their distinctive unit tactics. Military historian Timothy Dawson notes that while Byzantine armies typically relied on complex combined arms tactics, the Varangians specialized in the devastating frontal charge that exploited their physical strength and psychological impact. Enemy accounts frequently mention the terror inspired by these towering northern warriors advancing in disciplined formation, their massive axes raised for the killing stroke. For warriors from the cold forests and fjords of the north, life in Constantinople, which its inhabitants called simply the city, Eta Pylamdoiota/Ipolis, represented an overwhelming sensory and cultural experience. According to historian Judith Heron, the Byzantine capital was the largest and most sophisticated city in the Christian world, with a population approaching 500,000 during the 11th century, a stark contrast to the small settlements most Varangians would have known in their homelands. The guards maintained their own distinct quarter within Constantinople. Archaeological excavations directed by Jonathan Harris have identified this area near the Parama Harbor district, where runic inscriptions and distinctive northern artifacts have been discovered. This Varangian enclave served as both residential area and social center for off-duty guards, with its own taverns, shops, and eventually churches catering specifically to the northern warriors and their families. Off-duty Varangians had access to entertainments and luxuries unimaginable in their homelands. Historian Alexander Kasdan documents how the guards were renowned patrons of Constantinople's taverns, bathhouses, and even its sophisticated hippodrome races. Byzantine sources occasionally complain about drunken Varangians causing disturbances, a reminder that despite their elite status, these were still warriors from cultures where drinking prowess was celebrated alongside fighting skill. The wealth accumulated by successful Varangian guardsmen was substantial. According to economic historian Michael Hendy, guards received not only regular salaries paid in gold but also special bonuses upon an emperor's coronation, the scholia, shares of war booty, and access to lucrative imperial service contracts. Byzantine records mention individual Varangians returning home with enough wealth to establish themselves among the elite of their native societies, a testament to the financial opportunities service in the Guard could provide. Religious life for the Varangians evolved over time. Early Varangians from Rus and Scandinavia, according to religious historian John Sanadopoulos, likely followed their Prince Vladimir's lead in converting from paganism to Orthodox Christianity, while later Anglo-Saxon recruits brought their established Christian traditions from England. Historical evidence indicates the Varangians eventually had their own dedicated church in Constantinople, the Church of St. Olaf, named after the patron saint of Norway, where services might have been conducted in languages familiar to the northern warriors. Marriages between Varangians and Byzantine women created lasting connections between the guards and local society. Demographic historian Angeliki Leo notes that while some guards returned home after their service, others settled permanently in Constantinople, marrying local women and establishing families that blended northern and Byzantine bloodlines and traditions. These cross-cultural families created lasting human links between Byzantium and the distant northern homelands of the Varangian Guards. Perhaps the most famous physical trace of the Varangians in Constantinople is the runic graffiti carved into the marble balustrade of Hagia Sophia, the great cathedral of Byzantine Christendom. Runologist Tinika Luajenga has identified several inscriptions in Norse runes, including one attributed to Halfdan, who apparently carved his name during a church service. These casual markings provide a tangible connection to the individual warriors who stood in awe before the greatest architectural achievement of medieval Christendom. The beginning of the end for the Varangian Guard came with the Fourth Crusade's shocking conquest of Constantinople in 1204. According to historian Jonathan Phillips, when Western Crusaders diverted their supposedly holy mission to attack the Christian Byzantine capital, the Varangians fought desperately to defend the city. Byzantine chronicles describe the guards making a last stand around Emperor Alexios V. Doukas, fighting until overrun by superior numbers of Crusader knights and infantry. Following the Latin conquest, the Guard temporarily ceased to exist in its traditional form. However, historian Michael Angold notes that when Byzantine forces recaptured Constantinople in 1261, Emperor Michael VIII Palaiologos re-established a version of the Varangian Guard, though this reconstituted unit lacked the size, resources, and prestige of its predecessor. As the once mighty Byzantine Empire contracted to a regional power, its elite guards similarly diminished in importance and capability. The final chapter in the Varangian story came with the ultimate fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. According to historian Stephen Runciman, who meticulously documented the city's last stand, the few remaining Varangians joined Byzantine defenders on the walls against overwhelming Ottoman forces. Though not specifically mentioned in accounts of Emperor Constantine's last stand, it would be fitting if the last Varangians died as the first had lived, defending their emperor against impossible odds. The cultural impact of the Varangian Guard extended far beyond their military significance. Historian Sverrir Jakobsen has traced how returning Varangians brought Byzantine cultural influences, technologies, and stories back to their northern homelands. Everything from architectural styles to religious art in Scandinavia, Russia, and Anglo-Saxon England shows evidence of Byzantine influence, with returning guardsmen serving as crucial vectors for this cultural transmission. The Varangians left a particularly strong mark on Norse literature and saga-telling. Literary historian Jonathan Shepard documents numerous saga references to service in Miklagard, Constantinople, with tales of Varangian adventures becoming a recognized subgenre in medieval Scandinavian storytelling. Famous sagas like King Harold's Saga devote substantial sections to the protagonist's service in the Varangian Guard, indicating how deeply this imperial service penetrated the northern cultural imagination. Archaeological evidence of Varangian service has been discovered across the northern world. Numismatist Jonathan Jarrett has documented significant finds of Byzantine coins in Scandinavia, Ukraine, Russia, and England, many likely brought home by returning guardsmen. Similarly, distinctive Byzantine-style jewelry, religious items, and weapons have been found in northern burials, physical testaments to the guards who returned home with exotic souvenirs of their imperial service. The most enduring legacy of the Varangian Guard may be their demonstration of how effective cross-cultural military institutions could be in the medieval world. Military historian John Haldon suggests that the Guard's success offers an important counterexample to assumptions about medieval xenophobia and cultural isolation. The Byzantine emperor's pragmatic willingness to entrust their safety to foreign warriors, and those warriors' ability to function effectively in a radically different cultural environment, suggests more complex intercultural dynamics than often assumed for this historical period. In many ways, the Varangians embodied the multicultural nature of Byzantium itself, an empire that combined Roman political structures, Greek cultural heritage, and Christian religious identity into a distinctive civilization. Just as the empire drew strength from synthesizing diverse influences, the Guard combined northern fighting traditions with Byzantine military organization to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Warriors who were neither fully Byzantine nor entirely northern, but representatives of a unique medieval institution that has captured historical imagination for over 1,000 years. Subscribe now, become a member, turn on notifications, share this video with your friends, and leave a comment so we can compare our knowledge and sources. Thank you for following our channel. Until our next strategic journey, here at Warriors of the World.